Thank you for joining I Am Possible, which is India's first future tech meets sustainability podcast. And today I'm delighted and honored to have with me Mr. Raghavender Sahdev, who's the co-founder and CEO of Nuport Robotics, Inc., which is Canada's first autonomous trucking company focused on middle mile automation for company supply chain operations. Nuport's mission is to automate company supply chains, increase sustainability, and reduce operation costs for clients. So, Raghavinder, really appreciate you taking time and being part of the podcast. So, I would let you introduce yourself.
Thanks a lot, Eddie, and I also appreciate your reach out, and I'm happy to be on this podcast. So I'll give you a little bit about my background. So I'm originally from India, and my background has been for the last 9 years in autonomous driving, robotics, computer vision, machine learning, and I would like to describe myself as an engineer by choice, but an entrepreneur by heart. In the past, I've worked with different companies as in technical and business positions at Huawei, in Google Summer of Code. I've been involved in multiple startups. I've also been involved in the Indian defense robotics sector. And in addition to that, I've published multiple research publications. So I am a hardcore techie with a business mindset who wants to make a difference in the world and create the next billion-dollar global company.
Lovely,
Right now,
yeah.
we have operations in Canada and India, and we only hope to expand further.
The autonomous trucking will be a humongous business, not just a business opportunity, but the kind of impact that will create on the world, the environment. Before we get into the autonomous trucks, I would like you to kind of go back a little bit and step back, because autonomous vehicles. I mean, we still are working on a whole lot of stuff, but there's something called as ADAS. So would you like to kind of
Yes.
explain what ADAS is, and then maybe we can get on to autonomous vehicles?
Sure. So what we mean by ADAS in the autonomous driving industry is advanced driver assistance systems. So what that means is this is not complete autonomy. So these are lower levels of automation which assist the driver and make their driving more easier and enhances their driver experience. And at the same time, increase safety, meaning you can have forward collision assist or emergency braking, or you can as simple as just lane keep assist. So if you have driving in a lane, your car will, or the car or the bus or the truck will follow in that lane. And if you drift, it's just going to give you a small, uh, maybe some haptic feedback on the steering wheel. So these are some basic lower levels of automation. That's what we mean by ADAS. And that ADAS is usually considered as level 2 autonomy. Overall, uh, modern cars have been equipped with ADAS systems. Heavy commercial vehicles are also rolling out with these systems, but it's not as prevalent as it is with passenger vehicles.
So there are a lot of the future forward companies are already incorporating adding ADAS elements onto the vehicles. Plus there are companies which are giving you these ADAS kits. So yeah, the future of mobility looks super awesome. Why don't we explain what is autonomous vehicle, and also maybe while you are at it, explain the various levels of autonomous driving.
So there are essentially 5 primary levels of automation, which they refer to as SAE levels of automation. The first level is essentially driver assistance. So what that means is it's essentially uh, it's considered as the lowest level of automation, and it offers features such as steering or acceleration, meaning cruise control or adaptive cruise control. So what this means is the vehicle can be kept at a safe distance behind the car. So this would qualify as a level 1 autonomy, and uh, and humans are responsible for monitoring all the other aspects of driving, such as steering and braking. So you can imagine the car is just driving in a straight line, and it's taking care of the throttle or acceleration, and steering and braking would be taken care of by the driver. Next, we have level 2 automation, which is not usually referred to as partial autonomous driving. So this is what we call as the advanced driver assistance system, which is ADAS, which we were talking just earlier. And what we mean over here, the vehicle can control both steering and acceleration at the same time. So something like a Tesla's autopilot would qualify as a level 2 autonomous feature, which they sell it as. And the human is sits behind the vehicle and is responsible for all to taking control whenever it's required. And most of the OEMs are focused on having level 2 features in their passenger vehicles or heavy commercial vehicles. Next, we have what is called level 3 autonomy, which is typically referred to as conditional automation. So one thing we should note over here is the jump from level 2 and level 3 is significant, because it is now what we are saying is that it is full autonomy. However, the driver needs to be ready to take control uh, under specific situations. So you can think about it as, my car is driving on a highway and suddenly the car will give an alert, okay, driver, you need to take control. This is also considered as a little risky feature because it is assumed that, let's say the car is driving for an hour and suddenly at the next minute it's telling asking the driver to take control. So a lot of companies are skipping level 3 autonomy primarily because of the risk that it poses to deployments. And at Nuport also we are skipping this part and directly moving to level 4 automation. What we mean by level 4 autonomy is that the vehicle is able to drive under all under specific set of predetermined conditions, and the vehicle is comfortable. Like it could be, I can drive my vehicle on Toronto roads on particular set of routes, and that's where I'm pretty comfortable. And during this, the driver doesn't need to pay a lot of attention. And it can also have it can also refer to driverless. I mean, there may not be a driver required at this point. However, it's under a set of predetermined conditions. Conditions could mean, let's say the vehicle is moving from under just in a particular city on a particular set of route, or just in a city, as opposed to large scale deployment. And a lot of companies are focused on level 4 autonomy. And next we have is what we typically refer to as level 5 autonomy. So what we mean over here is at that point, the vehicle is fully autonomous under all weather conditions, all different traffic scenarios, and the vehicle is able to drive on its own throughout all conditions, whether different traffic scenarios, different geographical jurisdictions. If I say my car can work in Toronto, it should also be able to work in, let's say, Montreal. Or if my car is working in Pune, it should be able to work in Delhi. It should be able to work in Bangalore. It should be able to work in Hyderabad. And obviously, that's a long shot because Bangalore traffic or Delhi traffic, we all know how that is. So that essentially, that's what we refer to as the 5 levels of automation in the industry.
Yes, there are some prominent industry leaders who assume that you would get into level 5 autonomous vehicles by 2020 or 2022, and we are quite way off. And I kind of believe that, I mean, going to a level autonomous driving would need us to create general intelligence, because that's the only way you could have a vehicle drive on its own without any human intervention. Now, would you want to explain how does an autonomous vehicle work? What's the stack behind it? What's the hardware and the software required to build an autonomous vehicle?
So to build an autonomous vehicle, there are 2 components, the hardware and the software. In hardware, you have let's say if it's a passenger vehicle or a truck or a bus, any kind of vehicle, the hardware requirements is sensors, an onboard computer, and an actuation system, which is responsible for sending control commands to drive the vehicle. At the end of the day, it is steering, braking, and throttle, just 3 commands that are responsible for driving the car. Now, on the sensor side, you have cameras, LiDARs, radars, GPS that are installed on the system that is responsible to see. So that is the perception. So that's what the car is seeing. Like we humans use our 5 senses to perceive the environment. That's what the car uses, or the truck uses to perceive what's around it. So that's on the hardware side. So that's ingesting data. And then we have the onboard computer that processes the data and comes up with predictions of what to do next. That is where the AI algorithms are involved. Different components of AI algorithms: perception, motion planning, controls, uh, all those, I'm just calling them simple terminologies, but this is the brain of the autonomous system. That is what different companies are working on. And you have different companies just based on perception or just based on prediction as well. So that forms the brain of the autonomous driving vehicle, and that is responsible for essentially telling commands. It outputs commands such as steering, braking, and throttle. So those three commands essentially, or shifting if there's a gear shift required. But those three commands are essentially the outputs that are responsible for having the car driven on a public road in a most safe manner. Some of the challenges are like you need to predict human intent, how the other human vehicle is driving, or humans are crossing the roads, and components like that need to be handled through the technology on the software side.
In foreign countries, I think the way they drive, it's very structured. In India, we are extremely chaotic, unstructured. There are taxis and rickshaws which do not have rear view mirrors. They actually, instead of signaling, they use hand to signal. So it's a crazy problem to solve, and I hope that people such as yourself and those brilliant minds around the world would be able to solve the autonomous driving problem. Nuport Robotics. Why did you choose to solve autonomous truck? And talk about your the Newport level, your stack also. It says that you are doing level 2 stack, right? I mean, is it built in house? Is it done with some partnership?
So first of all, why autonomous trucks is because like heavy commercial vehicles are what we feel at Newport are the first set of vehicles that will end up getting automated, primarily because of the high amount of repetitiveness involved. And like that's so trucking industry as a whole involves movement of goods from point A to point B. And now when we're moving goods along a set of fixed routes, so the truck is going back and forth on the same route again and again, day in and day out. So it's a very repetitive and mundane task. So I'll first talk about from the Western world. So this is something that is like essentially begging to be automated, because if you look at how technology has evolved, all the sets of repetitive mundane tasks. So today, we just as simple example, we have machines to do stuff that humans used to do in the past. And then gradually AI is solving stuff that is very like cumbersome or hard on the mind. And it's like tasks that a machine should do, or at least assist the human to do, we should leverage technology to make our lives simpler, safer, and more efficient. So talking from an autonomous trucking perspective, the reason of choosing autonomous trucks is because we feel this is the first industry that's going to get automated, and the lower amount of chaoticness involved on for trucking as opposed to passenger vehicles. Let's say if you're working in city environments, downtown city roads, if you're talking about solving full autonomy, level 4 autonomy for passenger vehicles, the amount of variability and diversity is extremely high, which makes the problem much more difficult if you're trying to solve that for passenger vehicles. For trucking, they are operating on roads that are a little, little different than what a passenger vehicle would encounter. I'm specifically talking from a North American perspective currently. Now, coming back to the Indian perspective of why level 2 autonomy is because I'm personally from India, so I do understand the chaoticness present on different city roads in Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, Pune, Hyderabad, Chennai. So one of the reasons we want to choose India is because Indian market is extremely price sensitive. It's a challenging market. So we want to challenge ourselves. Like if we can do stuff on Indian roads and solve for level 2 autonomy to begin with on Indian roads, then we can pretty much operate anywhere in the world. So we've purposefully chosen the hardest country to work with respect to autonomous driving, and at the same time realizing that it's going to be at least a significant amount of years where autonomous driving, if at all it is actually solvable in India also. I'm deliberately saying if it is solvable, because Indian roads, as we know, it's extremely chaotic. And even if autonomous driving, full autonomous driving is, at what point of time it's viable, which is why we want to use technology as a means to make the drivers' lives uh, more comfortable, like more safer. In India, our intent to have autonomous driving vehicles is not to have driverless cars or trucks or buses. It's to have the experiences of the drivers much more safer, reducing road accidents, uh, and overall making the whole system more efficient. So we've seen we can pull up all the stats, but there's a so many high amount of accidents with heavy duty commercial vehicles such as trucks and buses. And it's not fair to have these accidents when they can be avoided by technology. So our fundamental or our primary goal of our operations in India is to reduce these road accidents and improve the quality of uh, public road transportation and trucking transportation in the country in different cities, and scaling city by city, starting from one city, then going to the next one, and then solving and making the whole overall safety of the city much better and reducing the road accidents. That's our primary motive for doing level 2 autonomy in India.
Would like you to first kind of elaborate, how do we kind of,
Mm.
cut down the accident, because that's such a huge problem
Mm.
with these trucks, because
Mm.
even if you move from Bombay to Pune,
Mm.
you see, through the road you'll see some or the other truck,
Mm.
possibly has met with an accident, and do address, like unlike North American roads which are open
Mm.
wide and straight, India
Mm.
has winding roads, there are no street lamps,
Mm.
then there are these mountainous road. How do you plan to address all of these? Because yes, I mean, if you if like you said, if you kind of are able to, create autonomous driving, autonomous trucks over here in
Mm.
India, and if it can handle the Indian roads, yes, it would be able to handle any roads. But yes, elaborate a little bit on how do you
Mm.
plan to address all of these problems.
Sure. So from some there are a lot of edge cases and challenges in India when it comes to having, just for example, let's say if a truck is driving straight and it is not usually able to see what is coming behind, or if a human crossing or an animal crossing, or a car specifically just trying to change a lane. And uh, and what the technology can offer is having alerts or alarm systems, or just like a simple alert that somebody's coming where the driver may not be looking. And I'm sure, I mean, if you've driven on Indian roads, you know that such alerts might be quite helpful if it's just, you're not able to pay attention to everything that's happening around the road just because of the chaoticness on the road that's present. So just simple alerts like having, let's say if the truck is going straight and you have a feature such as a forward collision assist, where the truck is driving at a particular speed, and then it gets a overall 360-degree view around what is present around the environment of the truck. And if the truck, let's say if the truck is driving straight, I'm just making up a situation, truck is driving straight, let's say at 40 kilometers per hour, and a car cuts in at 20 kilometers per hour, wherein it's just slowing down or it's just changing lane, but then decides not to change the lane. I mean, if the car is going straight and it decides to change the lane, but it doesn't give an indicator, now the truck driver may not see it, because just for any reason that he wants to take a left, the car is going straight and without indicator is going to change to the left, and the truck is also going to take a left, but the truck suddenly decides, no, I'm not going to take a left, and it continues to go straight. So a collision is waiting to happen. But if technology can at that time provide an alarm or an alert to the driver that, hey, there's something coming up, in just simple audio warning, that's death reduced right there, or a severe accident reduced right there. And now a severe accident reduced in this case, but let's assume that the truck is now driving at 100 kilometers per hour and the car is cutting in it at 90 kilometers an hour. or 110 kilometers an hour, then the severity of the accident also increases. So at that time, if the truck can just be given a simple alert, and the driver can change the action that it takes at that time, that's accident reduced right there. And today we have technology that can directly solve this by detecting the car, detecting all the obstacles around it, and directly reducing the accident at that point. And then when you scale this across multiple vehicles in different situations in different cities, then you have a national perspective of the amount of accidents that you can reduce.
Yeah, I think once these autonomous driving solutions gets I mean road ready, the amount of accidents it could reduce, which will be humongous, because we have so many cases of drunk driving, especially with the truckers who do these long drivings, and they
Exactly.
yeah end up drinking in the night, just to stay awake and keep on driving. So yes, I mean, I'm looking forward for these solutions, which makes life simpler. Now, tell me, has this solution of yours, the stack of yours, Nuport Robotic,
Mm.
has it been deployed? Has it been tried and
Mm.
tested in Canada or any other countries?
So we've deployed the stack in Canada, and we are in the process of deploying the stack in India. So recently, we also made an announcement announcing our partnership with Pinnacle Industries and ECA, its electric vehicle technology subsidiary. So as a part of the partnership, we'll be deploying our technology on 5,000 buses over the next few years. And that'll be a direct precedent that we'll be setting up in the country of how level 2 autonomy can help the bus sector and uh, improve the safety. Because let's say if the bus is backing up, it may have certain blind spots that it cannot see, but the technology can directly see all the blind spots and alert the driver that, hey, stop, there's somebody, just even a child crossing, because children do not understand signals. Just a small child is just crossing the street, and the bus is backing up, and the bus suddenly gets an alert, and the driver presses the brake. So yes, we are deploying in the country, and we've already deployed some of our technology in Canada, and we are in the process of validating the technology in Canada, and at the same time accelerating technology developments and deployments in the country, in India.
Superb. Congratulations. I mean, once again, for your partnership with Pinnacle Industries and ECA. I mean, that could be a precedent, I mean, 5,000 buses. And then obviously from there, you'll move on to, trucks and so on and so forth. So it's a, there is so much that once you actually these gets deployed, I mean, there'll be so much of learning, and then you could just iterate on the solutions. What's the cutting edge of innovations when it comes to autonomous level driving? And you could touch your buses, your trucks, and your vehicles also.
So our competitors from in autonomous trucking industry are companies that are primarily focused on the US, such as Too Simple, uh, Embark, plus different trucking companies that are currently different autonomous trucking companies that are operating in the US. And what differentiates us from them is primarily we are following a phased approach towards autonomy, and we're focusing a lot of our efforts on Canada and India to begin with. From an Indian perspective, we have like India is an extremely price sensitive market, and we believe like our technologies deployment, the quality of our technology has been proven out. We've already tested and benchmarked our algorithms on Canadian conditions, and we're in the process of validating our algorithms on Indian road conditions. We've already seen promising results on existing Indian data sets, and we are building our own data set, which will have extensive testing and evaluation being done using our proprietary algorithms. So uh, the what differentiates us from our competitors is our realistic approach towards autonomous driving. We are not saying that we're going to solve autonomous, like we're going to have driverless vehicles in India. Right from the get-go, we are being realistic, knowing that that's an extremely hard problem, uh, and recognizing that fact, and at the same time, just being uh, understanding what the Indian driving situation requires uh, from a level 2 autonomy standpoint, and addressing those components as they come.
Talk to us a little bit more about the partnerships. You mentioned about your Pinnacle Industries and e-car partnerships where you're deploying 5,000 buses. You have also partnered with World Trade Center Pune, right? I mean, talk about that also, and then yes, maybe elaborate on the India market, go to market strategy.
To talk about the first point of our Indian operations setup, so we have set up operations in Pune to begin with, and we are expanding our team in India. We're establishing a strong team in India. We have a Canadian team already, and we are setting up operations in India, which is in line with our partnership with Pinnacle in Pune. And we'll be very soon expanding our presence in India. To start with, we'll be starting with Pune and Mumbai, and gradually scaling to different cities. In addition to that, talking about our partnerships, so our initial approach is to partner with different OEMs. So Pinnacle is the first company that we are partnering with, and we are also open to partnering with other OEMs such as Tata, Mahindra, Ashok Leyland, and other OEMs that manufacture electric buses or usual normal buses or trucks, both electric and diesel. So our approach is to work with OEMs and collaborate with them to have the sensors and the AI software directly embedded into the truck or the buses right away once they leave the OEM, and that is directly being offered to the clients. So we're directly working with OEMs in India.
Right. So you started with the dream of building an autonomous truck. Today, you said that you have partnered with Pinnacle Industries, and you in the next few years you'll be having possibly 5,000 buses which will be deployed in Indian roads. That itself is such a huge achievement. But I'm sure your dream remains that like
Yes.
a full autonomous driving, and that's a dream of, I think, some of the top developers around the world, some of the top engineers, some of the top companies. To be realistic, I mean, do you think level 5 autonomous driving problem will be solved? Is it something which is realistic? Because as driving, I mean, when you're driving on the road, it's not just the car ahead. You have to think what the driver is thinking, because at least here in India, when you're driving, you never know what the other guy is thinking and what's he going to do last minute. So as somebody who's on the road driving, you have to have all the perceptions, intelligence of a human to understand the how to solve that problem, and it's not just like a computer vision problem. It's also your audio, because there are a lot of times there are things going on, like there's an ambulance coming from somewhere, or I mean, there's various things which works as an audio signal. So how do you solve this? This is like a huge problem, and I'm sure as an engineer who's solving the autonomous trucking, I'm sure your aim is to solve the level 5 autonomous driving. Do you have ideas or frameworks on how do we get there? Or is there others, your peers, who you think are on the right track when it's asking to how to solve this problem?
So level 5 autonomy, yeah, it is realistic. However, it is going to take at least a significant amount of years before we get there. Some companies are claiming they'll get it to level 4 by certain years, even those timelines have not been met. And there have been bold claims that have been made in the industry, and now people are realizing the amount of complexities and difficulty involved in solving for actual level, even level 4. I won't even touch level 5, because level 4 also still needs to be solved before we get to level 5. And level 5 is even a more significantly harder problem than level 4, which is why a lot of companies are currently focused on level 4. So level 5 is realistic. However, my estimate is not, I mean, I'm saying a bare minimum of 15 years as a very minimum. And if you're talking India, you probably add a few more factors to that. So from a level 5 perspective, it is realistic, but there's a long way to go there. There's a there's a breakthrough in technology that is required to actually solve for level 5 autonomy. And at Newport, we are working on having a phased approach to autonomy wherein we go step by step with the final ultimate goal to have level 5 autonomy. Our current goal is level 4, but once we hit there, our roadmap is structured in a way which allows to get level 5 as well. However, we are targeting level 4 to be realistic, because level 5 directly targeting level 5 is a bit unrealistic given our chosen vertical and uh, regions of deployment. But to answer your question, yes, level 5 is realistic, and some of the companies are taking the right steps, some of the companies think they're taking the right steps, but they actually actually end up spending a lot of money and then realizing a simple mistake, that which we are at Newport, we are also learning from a lot of other companies' mistakes, because there have been companies that are working autonomous driving for a while, and certain learnings that the companies get, let's say from perception, which sensors to use, when to use which sensor, what works in rainy conditions, what works, and if there's extreme amount of rain, can you even have autonomous driving? Like let's say in Mumbai weather, when extremely raining, how do you even have an autonomous vehicle running at that time? How is it even practically possible? And add to that the Indian chaoticness. Even that's even steps it up a level further. So when we're talking level 5, it's like extreme. It is realistic, because I wouldn't say anything that is not possible, because as you can imagine, the podcast is also called I Am Possible. So level 5 is possible, but it's a matter of time till we actually get there. So just to end on in this specific question, is level 5 is possible, but there is a the right technology needs to be used. And a lot of companies think they're using the right technology, but at the end of the day, they spend a lot of money realizing that something specific will not work. It goes all the way from choosing the right sensors to using the right even power on board, to the right algorithms, real-time accuracy, because the vehicle needs to react within human reaction time or even lesser. For the algorithm, so the algorithms need to be running at that. Uh, they cannot afford to have a high amount of latency. Uh, so given all these challenges, uh, there needs to be a change. Companies need to start thinking differently than what has been already tried and tested. Some companies are on the right track. Some companies think they're on the right track. But at the end of the day, a lot of empirical evaluation, data collection, and testing needs to be required before we hit level 5. For that matter, even level 4.
Right. So you're just setting up here in India. Are you hiring those students and entrepreneurs who would want to be interested in doing something in your lines, in the autonomous driving space? What would be your suggestion to them?
So yes, we are hiring. So we are hiring autonomous driving engineers in different fields: perception, motion planning controls, in ADAS, and we're also hiring for business development people. So that's one, the hiring piece. And my suggestion to engineers and entrepreneurs who are looking to work in the autonomous driving industry specifically, I'll talk about engineers first. So most important thing is engineers to understand what they know and what exists in the industry, and having their fundamentals cleared out, all the way starting from just like courses that they take in their first and second year, third year. uh, the fundamentals need to be clear, and then only you can think about what will actually work, what will not work. And definitely having some advanced research background, uh, and knowing what works, knowing what doesn't work. So focusing both on research and engineering mindset will lead to a stronger uh, intelligence from an engineering standpoint, because people, when they graduate from undergrad, they think they know it all, but at the end of the day, don't know much at all. And I'll just take my example in itself. Like I thought after undergrad, I graduated from Blitz Pilani. I know a lot. I started working in a research lab. I said, oh my God, I don't know anything at all. And then because after undergrad, you don't know much. So they should definitely pursue higher studies from an engineering standpoint. If they're interested to do research and development in the autonomous driving industry, go for a master's. Or it doesn't need to be master's, just go to work for a company that's doing the right thing and learn through that as well. The goal is to have fundamentals clear. From an entrepreneurship perspective, understand and study the market, find your niche, what you need to have, and at the same time always understand the fact that what has already been tried and tested, learn from other people's mistakes, learn from everyone. uh, Good, people are doing the right thing, people are doing the wrong things. There's a lot of learnings that can be derived from everybody. And from an entrepreneurship perspective, have conviction and passion in what you're doing, and at the same time be realistic. Don't uh, think you can do something in a year when it actually is going to take 5 years. So just be realistic, true to yourself, have respect for your peers, respect for the team. And yeah, those are some of the tips that I would like to give some entrepreneurs and engineers. They're varied because engineer is different than an entrepreneur. And a good engineer doesn't mean that he's necessarily going to be a good entrepreneur. At the same time, a good entrepreneur should know the fundamentals of engineering. Entrepreneurs don't have excuses. They cannot not afford to know at least an overview of the technology.
A lot of these students, they graduate, and there's such a big difference from theory and doing it. They were doing it actually practically. So yes, and besides that, you also mentioned that today I think learning is almost free. I mean, there's so much content out there in the net, and there are people who are so open. You could just shoot a mail to engineer and you get his perspective. Yes, you need to be a little inquisitive, curious, be ready to be a lifelong learner, ask deep questions, and there's so much opportunity. So thank you, Raghavender. Really appreciate you taking time and being part of the podcast and sharing your insights, and wish you the very best for you and the entire team and Nuport Robotics. My last question to you, I mean, this is just a hypothetical question. I mean, think that you're sitting in 2030. How do you think the mobility is going to look like? And maybe also what do you think, what role will Nuport be playing over there in the future of mobility?
So let's say if you're in 2030, I imagine autonomous trucks to have already been working in certain specific jurisdictions in the world. And depending on the country we are talking about, some countries being further along, some countries being on a similar pathway to success. And from a Newport's perspective, I imagine Newport to be in multiple different geographies on different continents. Right now, we're in North America and India. Our goal is to scale to multiple other continents. By 2030, we want to establish ourselves in other countries and prove out the validity and repeatability and deploy at scale in multiple jurisdictions and different countries that we have in mind. We already have initiated conversations with a lot of different leaders in autonomous driving in different leading countries. So in 2030, I imagine a significant amount of increase on the order of a few hundred thousands of trucks and buses to be deployed in different countries each.
Lovely. Few hundred thousands. I mean, maybe we'll have a conversation in 2030 and hold you for that. I hope that comes true, because the kind of lives it'll be saving, it'll be humongous. And the full mobility, I mean, I think, it's going to play such a huge role, in reversing the climate impact, because I believe that it's going to take, right from, go from EVs, which will help in clean energy, and then
Yes.
maybe, you go to autonomous driving, and the far out future when we actually have these autonomous driving. It's going to be so awesome. Though we didn't touch the subject of automation, but I would like to, I mean, kind of address this in a way that technology is always a tool which has augmented us. So there will be some cons, but there'll be lots of pros. I guess that's the way technology has always been, and it always will help us augment and create a better future for everyone. So thank you once again for taking time and being part of the podcast. And to my listeners, if you like what you see and hear, then please press the subscribe button. And until next time, see you guys. Bye-bye. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Eddie. It's great being on the show. I really appreciate your time. Thanks a lot.